And at that moment, a voice came through. And this voice was not my thoughts because it was so clear. The voice said, "Look up and see if indeed he is awake." Hello, I've been thinking of you just because if you are going through grief or you lost someone you love, I just want to say that you are not alone. A few years ago in 2018, my husband and I come back from a family trip to the Dominican Republic, and we are so happy and excited. And my husband tells me, "Amore, I want to retire to the Dominican Republic." And I said to him, "It's your second time there. How can you be thinking of retiring to the Dominican Republic?" And he said, "I love it. I love your country. I love the people. I love the food. I love surfing. I love Playa Encuentro." He was so happy. He was beaming with joy. And so I said, "Okay, since we have two young girls, we have to find a place that is either a gated community or a place that we can purchase now to build later." And so we started looking for places, and I remember that I said, "I want a little house, but I don't want it close to the street. And I want space so that I can have a garden." And we were looking for places. We found two lots that someone was selling, and we were giving it an offer. But then the lawyer called us back and said, "The person decided that she is not going to sell. She changed her mind." And I remember getting a little upset about that and saying, "You know what, let's just take a break now. We've been looking for places to buy, properties, land, nothing has materialized. Let's take a break, and we can always go back and try to find a place, or go back in person and look at places there." And so shortly after that, Ed started getting infections, but we didn't know where these infections were coming from. So I remember that he got a nasal infection, went to the doctor. The doctor gave him antibiotic, the infection went away. But then he was fatigued, and he was having like his breath when he was going up the steps to the train stations, and then he had ankle pains, and he was having they were like really severe, because I remember saying, "Go to the emergency room," and he was like, "No, I'm not going to go there because they're not going to do anything for me." And so the next day he went to the doctor. The doctor did a lot of blood work on him and said to him, "I don't like that you here twice in a week. You are my healthiest patient here." And when those results came back, I remember that call on a Saturday morning at 8 o'clock saying to Ed that the test results indicate that he had acute myeloid leukemia, which is the most aggressive form of the 4 leukemias. And at that moment, we were so overwhelmed. We couldn't believe it. We were in denial. This could not have happened to Ed. Someone who was a vegetarian, someone who was so healthy, someone who exercised 4 to 5 days a week, someone who just took care of himself. And here he is with this harsh diagnosis. He called his family. He was doing research online, called his family, and we learned that no one in the family, his side of the family, had died from leukemia or had leukemia. And so we went to the hospital. The doctor says to Ed, "Yes, we did the test again. We redid the test. Everything indicates that you do have acute myeloid leukemia. We need to start treatment right away." And I remember that Ed did not want to start treatment right away. But the doctor said, "If you don't, you have 1 to 3 months to live. But if you start treatment right away, your life can be extended, and you might go into remission, which is no sign of cancer." And so he started treatment right away. And I remember that was such a heavy love for me and him. It was so, we started this journey where I was looking forward to have him come back home healthy. I was in the hospital as much as I could. I would rearrange a meal with daddy for our daughters to see him. The girls were 7 and 5, and they missed daddy so much. And I miss Ed so much. And I felt many times that I was drowning, that I will go to sleep as soon as I put my daughters to bed at 7:30. I will be in bed at 8:30, the latest, because I was so physically tired. I was working, I was taking care of my daughters, and I was taking care of my pet at the time, Pancho. And so I was very overwhelmed by everything. And to make a long story short, I got to the hospital one night and I stayed there, and I saw everything was getting worse. It wasn't breathing right. They brought a huge tank of oxygen, and he did not sleep. I did not sleep that night. There was so many things happening, and I remember in the morning I said, Ed, it's about 6 o'clock. I'm gonna go home, get dressed, take a shower, have some coffee, get dressed, take the girls to school, and then I'm gonna come back. And he says, I feel so bad that you were here all night and you did not sleep. And I said, are you kidding me? I'm not even tired. And it's true, I did not feel tired, even though I was up all night. I was just feeling so sad for him. And so I go home, I get into the shower. As I'm coming out of the shower and sipping my coffee, the nurse practitioner calls me and says, I know you just left, but please come back to the hospital. We need you. Ed needs you. I call a taxi. I go back to the hospital. And at that point, Ed is being brought to the ICU, intensive care unit. And when we go there, so many things happen there that I was in disbelief that he was in the intensive care unit. The last treatment had compromised his intestines, and he developed 2 air pockets. One of them burst, and they couldn't operate because he had no immune system. And so in the ICU, I'm there. My brother, they call my brother Andy, who was the emergency contact. My mom gets there. One of my other brothers, Pedro, gets there. One of my sisters, Glennie, gets there. And all of us are there with Ed, and we are talking. And I remember Ed wanting coffee, but he couldn't eat or drink anything. I remember Glennie brought him coconut water that he loved, but he couldn't drink it. I remember me putting ice chips in his mouth because it was the only thing that I could give him. And it was quite an experience for me because I was so nervous. His mom had called me that she missed the bus, and instead of arriving around 3 o'clock, she was gonna arrive after 5. And so I have all these things happening at the same time. The doctor comes in and says, where are your daughters? And I said, our daughters are in school. And she was like, please call and have someone bring them so that they can see their father. And I did that. And one of them goes into the right-hand side, the other one into the left-hand side. And I remember that Ed grabbed their hands and says, I love you so much. Daddy will always love you. Daddy will always be with you. And they were grabbing on his legs. And I remember them saying, Daddy, what do you have in your nose? And he said, well, this is helping me breathe better. And they were asking questions. They were curious. And I was just, my heart was breaking at that time. Then my girls were taken to see a counselor. They had started counseling. So the counselor had this little cute box, wooden, that the girls put together. And I remember her saying, this box is like a memory box. You will put things here that reminds you of your daddy. And she was like, your daddy has been here in the hospital for a long time now, 5 months. And your daddy is not getting better. So she was preparing the girls and the event that it would pass. I remember one of the girls went under a table and just started crying down there. And she was only 5. She started crying, and my older Kaya was very sad as well. And they were creating things to put in the box. And they say bye to Ed. They go back, they say bye, and they go home. I stay in the hospital. And when I'm staying in the hospital, Ed started talking. He is having these conversations. And in one of the conversations, he says, hot dogs. And I said, amore, hot dogs? You don't eat meat. And he says, amore, when I was a little boy, I used to eat meat. But I almost kind of like woke him up. And then he responded to my question. And then he went back, and it was almost like he was back to his childhood and reliving a lot of those experiences. And at that moment, his best friend, one of his best friend, a brother to him, Scott from Hawaii, who was here 2 weeks earlier and has spent a night in the hospital with Ed and was staying at our house, calls, actually texts me and says, Jay, is Ed awake? And I started texting, yes, he is. And at that moment, a voice came through. And this voice was not my thoughts, because it was so clear. The voice said, look up and see if indeed he is awake. And the minute I looked up, I saw Ed's soul leave the body. And it was this little, quickly moving downward light, bluish and whitish and clear around the sides. And when I looked at this part of the face, his forehead was dull and lifeless. And quickly I looked at his chest, was still filled with life. But anything that was scanned by this light that I know was his soul transitioning and leaving the body turned lifeless and dull. So I threw myself on it and said, I ask you not to leave me, and you are leaving me. And that was the most impactful yet desperate moment in my life. I knew it was leaving. I know his soul, that part of him that gave that body life, was leaving, and that I no longer was going to have his physical body. And that was quite a moment for me. And right after that, I know I started my spiritual transformation. So it took his passing for me to begin my spiritual transformation, seeing something that I never thought I could see. Something that I wasn't expecting, something so beautiful as a soul that you have, that I have, that we all have, that spark of life that is given to us when we enter our physical body. And so if you are going through grief, if you lost someone you love, you are not alone. If you've seen someone's soul leave the body or something similar to what I've seen, please contact me, share it with me. I will love to hear your story. Thank you for listening, and have a wonderful day. Sending you a big hug of light and gratitude. Bye for now. said, I want a little house, but I don't want it close to the street. And I want space so that I can have a garden. And we were looking for places. We found 2 lots that someone was selling, and we were giving it an offer. But then the lawyer called us back and said,